The fear started the moment her stepfather grabbed her arm. His fingers were rough, his breath smelled of whiskey. But it was the look in his eyes that made June's heart go cold. It was the look of a man who had run out of ways to save himself and had decided she was the payment he would use next. She tried to pull free. He held tighter. "You're coming," he had said. Not a request, not a choice. She felt the world tilt around her. Was this the moment her life stopped belonging to her? Was this the day she became property? And more frightening still, who was waiting on the other side of that door? Red dust clung to June's boots as her stepfather dragged her across the boardwalk of Bridle Pass, a small desert town that swallowed people whole. Even at 18, June moved like someone twice her age. Quiet, careful, always waiting for the next thing to fall apart. Inside Marlowe's diner, she had been carrying plates, wiping tables, and pretending this life was still hers. But now, pulled into the open street, she felt each step shaking her bones. "Roy," Miss Hattie Marlowe shouted from the doorway. Her voice was sharp. "Leave that girl be, she's on my clock." Roy's heart didn't slow, his grip tightened. "This is bigger than dishes," he said. "It's settled." Settled. The word made June's stomach twist. They crossed the street into the dark saloon. The air hit her like spoiled heat. Sweat, smoke, old beer. Men stopped talking. They watched her, some with pity, some with hunger, some with satisfaction. At the back table sat Silas Crane, the cattle baron who owned half the county and believed he owned the rest. His suit strained at the buttons. His smile never reached his eyes. "There she is," Silas said. "Bring her over." Roy shoved her forward like a mule at auction. "She's strong," he said loudly. "Hard worker." Quiet. June felt her cheeks burn. She wasn't a girl. She wasn't a woman. She wasn't anything. She was something being traded. Silas didn't look at her. He looked at the paper in front of him. $50 wipes your slate clean, he said, tapping the contract. "Sign it." Roy took the pen. His hand shook. He didn't meet June's eyes. He just scrawled his name and tried not to look ashamed. With that stroke of ink, June's heart belonged to a man she had never met. Silas folded the paper with a smug grin. "The girl works for me now." The room felt smaller, hotter. The walls seemed to press in around her. Then a voice rose from the bar, low, calm. "How much was the debt?" June turned. A tall man stood there with a glass of water in his hand. A man who carried silence like a second skin. Broad shoulders, dusty coat, eyes that missed nothing. Walker Hale, the widower, from Cinder Ridge Ranch. The lonely rancher the town whispered about, the man folks said spoke little and shot straight. Silas chuckled. "This ain't your concern, Hale." Walker stepped forward, boots soft on the uneven floor. "The law says a debt can be bought," he said, "so I'm asking again, how much?" Quote, "50, Roy muttered. Walker reached inside his coat, pulled out a leather pouch, and spilled more than 50 in coins onto the table. The sound silenced the room. "That covers debt and interest," Walker said. He didn't look at Silas. He looked at the folded paper. "I'll take the contract." Silas's smile cracked. "You're making trouble." Walker didn't blink. "I'm making things right." The two men stared at each other. Neither moved, neither breathed. Finally, Silas tossed the paper across the table. "Fine," he said. "Enjoy your trouble." Walker picked up the contract, folded it, and tucked it neatly into his coat. Then he turned toward June. "Come with me," he said. It wasn't a command, but it wasn't a question either. June stood frozen, trembling. She had no breath left, no words. She had gone from Roy to Silas to this stranger in the span of minutes. Walker saw the fear on her face. Something in his expression softened. "You're not safe here," he said quietly. "Stay at the diner tonight. I'll come for you in the morning. You can decide what happens after." The whispers started before they stepped into the sunlight. Walker Hale bought himself a bride. Paid 50 for Roy's girl. She's his now. June felt every word like a stone thrown at her back. When Walker walked her to Miss Hattie's diner, the older woman met them with a shotgun resting easy in her arms. "My girl stays here," Hattie said. Walker nodded. "I'll be here at daybreak. She needs a safe place tonight." June stepped inside the diner. The warmth embraced her, but she didn't feel safe. She didn't feel anything except the weight of being passed around like a sack of grain. That night in the small cot behind the kitchen, she lay wide awake. She wasn't Silas's property. She wasn't Walker's either, but she wasn't free. Not really. Just as her breathing finally slowed, a scream from outside snapped her eyes open. Then another sound. A frantic whinny. A roar. A bright orange light flared through her window. Miss Hattie's stable was on fire. And June knew, without needing to see the rider disappearing into the dark. This was Silas Crane's warning. This was only the beginning. Dawn broke gray and smoky over Bridle Pass. The stable fire had chewed through Miss Hattie's roof, leaving half the building nothing but black boards and ash. The smell of burned hay hung in the air like a warning that wouldn't clear. Walker Hale arrived just as the sun struggled through the haze. He stood beside Hattie, helping her tie off what was left of the stable wall. He worked in silent, steady movements. No fuss, no questions. He simply did what needed to be done. When he pressed a small pouch of coins into Hattie's hand, she frowned. "This wasn't your doing," she said. Walker shook his head. "It was meant for me," he answered. And she got caught in the middle. June stood near the doorway, her hands twisting in her apron. She felt the world narrowing again, pushing her toward another unknown path. Walker turned to her. "We should go," he said. She didn't argue. She didn't speak. She just climbed onto the wagon seat beside him, her bundle of belongings resting at her feet. The wheels creaked as they left the town behind. The ride was quiet. Too quiet. June kept her hands tight in her lap, afraid one wrong word might break whatever fragile safety she had. The land opened wide the farther they drove. Dry flats, red stone ridges, tough brush fighting to survive the sun. It was a lonely stretch, and the silence between them felt like a space she didn't know how to fill. Walker kept his eyes ahead. After an hour, he finally spoke. "You won't be hurt at my place. You have my word." June nodded, but her chest stayed tight. Words had been used on her before. Promises that never held. A man's word was something she no longer trusted. Cinder Ridge Ranch came into view. A single adobe house, a windmill turning slow, a barn built from thick timbers, and a small corral baked hard by sun. It was plain and quiet. A place built for a man who lived mostly inside himself. Inside the house was even quieter. No warmth, no color, just bare floors, sturdy chairs. A stone fireplace that looked like it hadn't held a fire in months. Everything smelled of dust and loneliness. "You can sleep in the loft," Walker said, pointing to a ladder in the corner. "It's warm up there. Keeps the wind out." "I can work," June said quickly, the words spilling out before she could stop them. "I don't want to sit idle." Walker blinked. "I didn't bring you here to sit," he said softly. "But you don't owe me anything." The word owe made her flinch. Everything in her life had been about owing, paying back. Losing herself piece by piece. He saw the flicker in her eyes. His voice gentled. "You're safe here," he repeated. "That's all." June climbed the ladder and found the loft small but private. A straw mattress, a single blanket, a tiny window that looked out over the dry wash. It wasn't much, but it was hers. More than she'd had in a long time. The next day settled into a rough, cautious rhythm. She rose before sunrise, milked the gentle brown cow behind the barn, cleaned the kitchen, found Walker's old tools and fixed a saddle strap, scrubbed floors that hadn't seen soap in years, lit the fireplace for the first time since she'd arrived. The house slowly changed. A little warmer, a little softer, a little more lived in. Walker noticed. But he didn't speak on it. He worked outside from dawn to dusk, fixing fences, digging deeper into the dry wash, hammering planks, checking cattle that were growing thin from the drought. He came in late with dust on his face and tired eyes. June always had coffee ready. He always nodded a quiet thanks. They ate in silence most nights. They lived like two people standing on opposite banks of a wide river, close enough to see each other, too far to cross. 2 weeks after she arrived, a small wagon rattled up the path. A woman with bright eyes and a warm smile hopped down. "Rosie Delgado," she said. "Miss Hattie sent me. Says the girl here needs clothes she can work in." June stepped forward, shy and unsure. Rosie studied her with gentle eyes. "We'll fix that," she said. "No girl should live in rags, no matter her past." She took June's measurements as she chatted, filling the quiet house with a kind of light it hadn't seen in years. When she left, she squeezed June's hands. "You're stronger than you look," Rosie said. "I see it." June didn't know how to answer. No one had spoken to her like that. Not ever. Later that week, another visitor walked through the gate. A tall Shoshone elder named Two Stones. His face carried a lifetime of weather and wisdom. He came not with trouble, but with knowledge. Walker met him with a quiet nod of respect. They walked the dry wash together, their words low and measured. June watched from the porch as Two Stones knelt, pressed his hand to the earth, and spoke softly. "The water sleeps," he told Walker. "Deep, old, you must dig here." Hope sparked in Walker's tired eyes. But hope was a fragile thing in a place like this. That night, as she set Walker's dinner on the table, the silence between them felt heavier than usual. He ate little, pushed his plate away. "This way of living isn't right," he said quietly. June froze. Her mind raced. Was he sending her away? Had she done something wrong? Walker reached into his coat and pulled out the folded contract he had taken from Silas. "This paper," he said, sliding it across the table. "You can tear it, or keep it. You can walk away tomorrow, or stay and earn wages. The choice is yours." June stared at it. The contract that had once owned her. The contract that might still. "Why would you do that?" she whispered. Walker looked into the fire, not at her. "Because I couldn't save my wife," he said, "and I won't stand by while another woman is crushed by this land." June's breath caught. She believed him. But trust was something else. Before she could speak, a sudden pounding of hooves shook the quiet night. Shouts echoed near the barn. June ran to the window. A horseman galloped through the dark, firing a shot into the sky. A warning. A threat. Silas Crane wasn't finished. And now danger had followed her to Cinder Ridge. The next morning, the sun rose behind a curtain of smoke drifting across Cinder Ridge. Walker checked the broken barn window where the warning shot had shattered the glass. He stood there for a long time, jaw tight, hands clasped behind his back. Silas Crane wasn't hiding his intentions anymore. June watched him from the kitchen doorway. Her palms felt cold even in the heat. She had hoped danger would fade once she left Bridle Pass. Instead, it had followed her here, like a shadow with teeth. Miss Hattie arrived just after noon, her buggy kicking up red dust as she stopped in the yard. She climbed down with the fierce energy of a woman who had raised half the town and scared the rest. "They're saying Silas brought a new paper to Sheriff Cole," she said without greeting. "A bill of sale. Claims Roy sold you to him. Says Walker stole you from his property." June's stomach dropped. Walker stepped closer. "A forged bill of sale?" he asked. "Of course it's forged," Hattie said. "But Sheriff Cole doesn't care. He's in Silas's pocket. He plans to ride out here tomorrow with a warrant." June's breath caught. "He can't take me." "He'll try," Hattie said, "unless we fight paper with paper." Walker looked at June, then nodded. "We'll go to town. File the contract I gave her. Make it official." June held the folded contract tight against her chest. It felt thin, too thin to stop a man like Silas Crane. The wagon ride to Bridle Pass was tense. The air smelled of dust and fear. June kept her eyes on the horizon, trying to steady her breath. When they reached the small adobe courthouse, people stopped talking, stopped walking. Every face turned toward them. The whispers rose like flies around a carcass. "That's the girl. Silas says she's his. Walker's playing with fire." June walked beside Hattie, chin high though her knees trembled. Sheriff Cole sat behind his desk, boots propped up, hat slanted low. He didn't look surprised to see them. "What can I do for you?" he asked, though the smirk said he already knew. "We're filing a legal labor agreement," Hattie said, placing the contract on his desk. Sheriff Cole lifted it with 2 fingers and read slowly. Too slowly. "Clerk's out of town," he said. "Can't file anything without him." "Then we'll wait," Hattie snapped. Cole smoothed the paper with his palm. "There's a problem," he said. "Silas Crane already filed a prior claim, a bill of sale. Says this girl belongs to him." June's breath hitched. "I don't belong to anyone," she said softly. Cole ignored her. "Since it's now a dispute, I have to keep this contract for evidence." He reached toward his desk drawer. Hattie slammed her hand down over his. "You will not take that paper." Cole opened his mouth to bark a reply. But a sudden roar shook the windows, a deep rolling sound. A sound that didn't belong to men. Thunder. June turned toward the door as the sky darkened to a sick, bruised blue. A sharp wind tore down the street, sending grit and loose papers flying. In seconds, fat drops of rain hit the windows like thrown stones. Then, the heavens opened. The first real storm in months crashed down over Bridle Pass. "We need to leave," June said, fear rising. "Walker's ranch, the animals, the gates." Hattie grabbed the contract from the sheriff's desk. While he was distracted by the sudden shift in weather, she stuffed it inside her coat. "This isn't over," she said, glaring at him. They ran into the street, skirts whipping in the wind. Mud splashed around their boots. The ride back to Cinder Ridge was chaos. Wind howled. Thunder cracked across the sky. Lightning split the ridge lines. The horses fought the rains, terrified by the storm. By the time they reached the ranch, the world was a blur of wind and water. Walker was already outside fighting to pull a heavy storm door into place on the barn. Rain soaked him through. The wind kept yanking the door from his hands. "The wash is flooding," he yelled over the storm, a calf strapped on the far side. June didn't think. She grabbed a rope from the wagon and ran to him. He tied one end around his waist and thrust the other to her. "Hold tight," he said, "no matter what." She dug her heels into the mud, gripping the rope with both hands as he plunged into the churning brown water. The current dragged him sideways. Mud surged around him. The rope snapped tight. June braced herself, choking on rain as she held him steady through pure will. Walker reached the calf, roped it, and slowly fought his way back. Every step looked impossible. Every movement pulled June forward. But she held on. He lifted the trembling animal out of the flood, just as a fallen branch swept past, slamming into the bank. They got the calf to safety. But the storm wasn't done with him. Wind slammed into the barn. The storm door gave way, swinging like a weapon on one hinge. "The main doors," Walker shouted. "If they blow in, the barn will go." Together they pushed against the heavy doors, shoulder to shoulder, mud under their feet, lightning above their heads. One final heave. They dropped the crossbar into place. Silence pressed in as the barn muffled the storm outside. Their breaths filled the quiet. Rain dripped from their hair and clothes. Walker looked at her. Not with gratitude, not with pity, with respect, the kind a man gave an equal. And in that charged silence, June finally understood something. The danger wasn't over. Not the storm, not Silas Crane, not the war that was coming. But she wasn't facing it alone. The storm finally died near sunrise. Gray smoke drifted low across the ground, mixing with mist rising from the soaked desert. The world looked bruised, as if the sky had spent the whole night fighting and had barely won. Inside Cinder Ridge's barn, June wiped mud from her skirt as Walker checked the animals. His left sleeve was torn from the struggle. His face looked older in the morning light, but his eyes were steady. He trusted her in that storm. That truth settled deep in June's chest. By mid-morning, a quiet knock came at the door. June opened it to find Miss Hattie standing on the porch. Her hair was a mess from the wind, her shoulders tense. "You need to see something," she said. Walker joined them. The three walked down to the edge of the property where the ground sloped toward the dry wash. Hattie pointed. A burned fence post. A half-buried boot print. Black powder where the wind hadn't taken it yet. "Silas Crane doesn't fire warning shots for sport," Hattie said. "He wants Walker rattled. He wants you scared." June wrapped her arms around herself. "He already knows where we live." Hattie nodded. "You two need protection, and you need proof. More proof than a contract." She looked at June. "You kept that paper safe?" June touched the inside of her apron, where the contract lay folded. "Yes." "Good," Hattie said. "Now you fight with paper, not fear." But June could still smell smoke from the stable in town. Fear was already here. The days that followed were uneasy. Every sunrise felt like it carried news. Walker worked the land hard, digging deeper at the wash where two stones had told him the water might sleep. June mended tack, cleaned the house, baked bread, and kept her hands busy to stop her mind from wandering to darker places. One afternoon, a line of dust rose on the trail. A rider approached at a steady pace. June stepped back from the porch, tension running cold through her ribs. It was Deputy Eli Ward, Sheriff Cole's young subordinate. His face was pale, his jaw tight. He reined in his horse near the porch and spoke in a low voice. "I shouldn't be here," he said. "But you both need to know something." Walker came out of the barn, wiping sweat from his forehead. "What is it?" he asked. Eli looked between them. "Sheriff Cole isn't acting alone. Silas Crane pays him regular. I've seen the ledger." June felt her pulse lurch. Eli reached into his saddlebag, pulled out a small worn notebook, and opened it just long enough for Walker to see the names, payment dates, amounts, initials, S.C. The book snapped closed. "If Silas says jump, Cole jumps," Eli said. "If Silas tells him to drag that girl back to town, he'll do it." June's throat tightened. "No one will drag me anywhere," she whispered. Walker stood beside her, his voice deep and calm. "No one will touch her." Eli nodded. "I believe that, but Silas is planning something bigger, something that involves more than a forged bill of sale." "What?" Walker asked. Eli swallowed hard. "He's preparing a petition, something about water rights. He's telling people Cinder Ridge doesn't use its water. Says the drought makes your land worthless. Says he should control the whole valley." June went pale. "He wants our land." "He wants your water," Eli corrected. "And he's using the law to get it." He turned his horse. "I've said what I can. Be careful, both of you." He rode away without another word. June stood still. The wind tugged gently at her hair. Water. Not just her. Not just Walker. Silas wanted everything. 2 nights later, the attack came. June woke to a strange light flickering across the loft walls. Not the warm glow of a fire. Something harsher. Flickering. Hungry. She pushed herself up and ran to the small window. Her breath caught in her throat. A line of fire raced across the pasture, crawling fast toward the wash. It ate the dry grass in snapping bursts, leaving a trail of black behind it. Sparks flew into the air like hot insects. Walker was already outside beating flames with a wet burlap sack. And from the far side of the ridge came a second figure. 2 stones, moving with the calm certainty of someone who had fought fire before. He carried a heavy wool blanket and set a small controlled burn, fire to fight fire. June raced out into the night. Walker stopped long enough to thrust a soaked sack into her hands. "Stay close to the house," he said. "Beat the base of the flames. Don't let it jump the wash." The heat hit her like a fist. Smoke stung her eyes. But she swung the sack again and again. The thud of her strikes mixed with Walker's, creating a desperate rhythm. Each time she thought they'd won, a new tongue of fire rose up. 2 stones' backfire caught the main blaze. The fires met in a hot roar, then fell low. Smoke drifted up. The worst was over. But as the flames dwindled, June turned and gasped. Walker clutched his forearm, teeth clenched, his sleeve burned through. Angry blisters rising across his skin. She ran to him, dragging him toward the house. "Sit! Let me see." He sank down with a grunt as she fetched cool water and her small tin of salve. She cleaned the burn gently. His jaw tightened, but he didn't pull away. Her hands moved slow and careful. His eyes stayed fixed on her face. For the first time, she felt the quiet thrum of something warm between them, a closeness earned through fire, through fear, through the kind of fight that binds two lives. But the night wasn't done with them. As she tied the last bandage, a shot cracked through the dark. Loud, sharp. June froze. She ran to the window. A lone rider sat on the ridge, a thin figure on a black horse, Red Jack Cutter, Silas Crane's cruel right hand. He fired a second shot into the sky and rode off. A warning, a promise. June's hands trembled on the windowsill. Silas wasn't finished. He was just getting started. The 2 weeks before, the hearing passed like a slow, tightening rope. Each sunrise brought new heat. Each sunset left the valley a little more dry, a little more anxious. June and Walker worked side by side, their hands busy from morning until night, trying to keep their minds from drifting to what waited in Bridle Pass. They spoke about chores. They spoke about cattle. They spoke about the sloppy way Walker stacked firewood. But they didn't speak about fear. That fear sat at the table with them each night, quiet and heavy. The legal papers sat there too, stacked in neat piles, all in June's careful handwriting. She read the water deed again and again, pressing her thumb over the old seal like it was a prayer carved into paper. Walker fixed fences that didn't need fixing. June cleaned rooms that didn't need cleaning. It wasn't work. It was distraction. The night before the hearing, rain began to fall. Not heavy. Just soft, steady drops that whispered against the adobe roof. The sound filled the small kitchen where they sat, lamplight soft on their tired faces. Walker stared at the flames in the hearth. His voice was thick with something he didn't want to say. "June," he began. She looked up, heart already tightening. "You shouldn't come to the hearing," he said. "Silas is dangerous when he's cornered. His men will be there. Red Jack will be there. I can't protect you in a crowded room." June's breath caught. There it was, that word again, protect. He pushed a small tin box across the table. Inside was money. More than enough to get to Santa Fe. "You can take the wagon before sunrise," he said. "You'll find work there. You'll be safe." Her hands curled into fists. Safe felt like another cage. "Walker," she said, standing slowly, "this is my fight too." "No," he snapped, fear sharp in his voice. "I won't lose someone else because I didn't act fast enough." She froze. Someone else. His wife. The wound he carried like a scar no one could see. Her anger softened, but she didn't back down. "You see me as someone who needs saving," she said quietly. "I get it. You lost someone you loved. You're scared." He flinched at the word scared. "But you don't get to push me away," she continued. "Silas came after you because you stood between him and what he wanted. But he came after me first. I was his target long before you paid that debt." She stepped closer, voice steady. "I worked this land with you. I faced fire with you. I pulled that rope until my hands burned. Don't tell me I don't belong in the room when we fight for it." Walker's breath left him in one rough exhale. June took another step. "You offered me a choice the day you brought me here. My life is mine, that's what you said. Well, I'm choosing to stay. I'm choosing to stand beside you." Her words didn't shout. They settled. They changed the space between them. Walker stood slowly. His face looked torn open, raw with emotion. "You don't know what you're saying," he whispered. "This world can break a person." "I've been broken before," she whispered back. "And I'm still here." He looked at her with the eyes of a man carrying a lifetime of guilt. Then she spoke the fear she had never said out loud. "All my life I've been told what happens between a man and a woman," she said. "In a house, in a bed." The word tasted heavy. Walker froze. "I was sold like livestock," June said. "I've seen what men become when they think they own a woman. That's the fear that followed me here." A tear slipped down her cheek before she could stop it. Walker stepped closer, slow, careful. "June," he said softly. He lifted a hand, but not to touch her, to offer it. "Look at me." She lifted her eyes. He took her hand gently, his calloused fingers warm around hers. "Nothing happens in this house unless you want it," he said. His voice was steady, an oath cut from stone. "Not now. Not ever. You nod, or it doesn't happen. You choose it. You lead it." June's breath trembled. He wasn't claiming her. He was giving her back to herself. That truth cracked something open inside her. Something hopeful, something warm, something she didn't know she was allowed to feel. Walker leaned in slowly, gave her time to pull away. She didn't. Their lips met in a soft, searching kiss. Not possession. Not demand. A question. Her answer was the way she leaned closer, resting her hands on his chest, feeling the steady thump of his heart against her palms. When the kiss ended, he stepped back first, not because he wanted to, because he wanted her to know she controlled the space between them. June's chest ached in a new way now. A good way. A growing way. She took a slow breath. "I'm going with you tomorrow," she said. Walker nodded. He didn't fight it. He didn't argue. He accepted her choice. And in that quiet acceptance, she knew something had changed. They weren't a rancher and a girl anymore. They were partners. They were something that could become love. Outside, the rain fell steady and soft. A promise and a warning all at once. The road to Bridle Pass waited, and so did Silas Crane. Morning light stretched across the desert as June and Walker headed toward Bridle Pass. The wheels of the wagon rolled through patches of dried mud left by the night's soft rain. The world looked washed clean, but the day carried a sharp edge. This was the day Silas Crane meant to take everything. June sat close beside Walker, the water rights deed folded inside his coat. The ink on that old paper felt heavier than steel. It was their only shield. It was the ranch's lifeline. It was everything. Halfway down the winding pass, the road narrowed into rock and shadow. The dry wash curved close. High boulders lined both sides like waiting giants. June's breath tightened. Something felt wrong. A figure stepped out from behind a tall stone. Red Jack Cutter, his rifle hanging at his side, his smile cold. Another rider appeared behind the wagon, cutting off any hope of turning back. Walker's hand slid toward the rifle, resting near his knee. "Going to the hearing," Red Jack said, voice lazy. "Mr. Crane figured you might need help. Or maybe a reminder to stay home." Quote, June scanned the ridge. Her heart kicked hard. Movement. A man crouched behind brush on the slope, 2 stones slipping into position to help them. Red Jack saw him too. He lifted his rifle fast. The gunshot cracked across the rocks. 2 stones stumbled, clutching his shoulder, falling face first into the dust. June gasped. Walker moved before thought, shoving her down behind the wagon seat and leaping into the dirt. He drew his pistol with quick, steady hands and fired twice, not to kill, but to break their trap. His bullets struck rock above Red Jack's horse. The animal reared, screaming, throwing Red Jack sideways. "Go, June!" Walker shouted. "Drive!" June scrambled to the seat and snapped the reins. The horses lunged forward, wheels kicking mud as the wagon shot past the men scrambling in the road. Walker ran beside the moving wagon, jumped up, and pulled himself onto the back. They didn't stop until the canyon opened wide and the danger fell behind them. Walker slid to the ground and ran to 2 stones. June followed, knees weak. The elder's face was pale, but his eyes were clear. "Bullet missed bone," he rasped. "Just a flesh path." June tore a strip from her skirt, binding his shoulder tight as Walker lifted him gently into the wagon. They drove to town without stopping. 2 Stones leaned back, jaw clenched, steady as stone even in pain. His presence meant more than any paper. He knew the land. He knew the water. He was their truth. The courthouse was packed. Men lined the walls. Women stood near the back. Dust, sweat, and tension thickened the air. Silas Crane sat near the front, beside a sharp-faced lawyer from Santa Fe. Sheriff Cole stood by him, tall and stiff like a guard dog. When June and Walker carried 2 Stones inside, the room fell silent. Judge Holden struck his gavel. "Mr. Hale," he said, "you're late. Explain yourself." Walker stood straight. "We were ambushed," he said. "Silas Crane's men." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Silas rose to his feet, hands open, pretending shock. "Wild words," he said. "No proof." June stepped forward. Her voice was steady. "We have proof." Quote. She laid the oil-wrapped deed on the judge's desk. His eyes sharpened as he unrolled the vellum map and examined the faded seal. An old territorial grant. Exclusive water rights. More original than any paper Silas owned. The judge nodded slowly. "This is significant." Silas's lawyer moved fast. "That document means nothing if abandoned. My client has built the largest cattle operation in the county. He uses the water. Mr. Hale does not." June spoke again, louder this time. "We use it. I have records. I keep the ranch books. I know every barrel drawn. I know every neighbor who came for water in the drought. We shared what little we had." Silas guarded his like a king guarding gold. A murmur swept across the room. Then she turned to 2 Stones. "Tell them what you told us." He spoke in slow, sure words. The aquifer beneath Cinder Ridge. The ancient markers. The water path unchanged for generations. The truth etched deep in the land. Rosie Delgado translated the parts the judge didn't understand. When he finished, the room was silent. Silent, with respect. Then the final blow came. Deputy Eli Ward stepped forward, holding a small ledger. "Your Honor," he said, "Sheriff Cole hid payments from Silas Crane. Here is his book, and here is the forged signature of the man Silas paid to fake the bill of sale." The judge's face hardened. "Silas Crane," he said, voice ringing through the room, "your petition is denied. Your forged document is criminal. You are fined $1,000 for fraud and conspiracy. This court recognizes the original water deed in Mr. Hale's possession." Silas's face twisted with pure hate. He lunged toward June. "Get the girl," he snarled. Red Jack rushed from the crowd, reaching for her. Walker shoved June behind him and fired one clean shot, hitting Red Jack's hand. The pistol flew as he howled. Another of Silas's men pulled his gun, aiming wildly into the crowd. June moved without thinking. She grabbed the tiny derringer Miss Hattie had made her carry. She couldn't hit a man from this distance. But she could hit something else. She aimed at the old wooden beam above him and fired. The beam cracked. The whole awning crashed down in a storm of splintered wood. It buried the gunman under a heap of broken boards. Silas froze. The fight was over. He turned and ran through the doorway, shoving people aside as he fled the town. Walker reached June and pulled her close. "You're safe," he said, breath unsteady. "It's done." Except June knew something else. This wasn't done. Not until Silas was caught. Not until the valley knew peace. Not until she and Walker knew their future was truly theirs. But for now, they had won. And they had won together. Outside, the first drops of soft rain began to fall again. A silver promise. A new beginning. If this tale touched your heart tonight, I'd be honored to have you join our little frontier family here. Your subscription helps keep these Wild West stories alive, and it means more to me than you know. If you'd like to hear more journeys of danger, love, and second chances out on the frontier, just hit that subscribe button before you ride out. Thank you for spending your time with me, partner. I'll see you in the next story.